Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
All right. Good afternoon to my colleagues on the East Coast and good morning to my colleagues across the rest of the country. We are very excited to be presenting our second webinar of our culminating webinar series for the GTL Center. Our topic today is using regional partnerships to create grow your own programs in Wisconsin. Before we get into the webinar, a few norms. Everyone's phone lines are muted to improve audio quality during the presentation. The way that we will be answering questions during the webinar is via the chat box. So if you take a look at your GoToWebinar chat box, that is where you can enter questions at any time for our presenters. We'll be pausing periodically throughout the presentation to respond to those questions, and we'll also try to keep some chat going in the chat box. So I mentioned that this is the second webinar of our culminating webinar series for the GTL Center. Our webinar series is on talent management strategies for high needs contexts. We've been partnering with colleagues in Texas, Hawaii, and Wisconsin to share our lessons learned about a really important state work that's been going around improving equitable access for great teachers and leaders and ensuring that the students who need it most have access to effective instruction. Across the series of these 4 webinars, which are each week in August, what we are doing is taking a look at successes, challenges, and lessons learned from work in these states, and ultimately how states and their partners implemented evidence-based strategies aimed at strengthening the educator workforce. So we've noticed that throughout our work with states, we have a focus on these evidence-based talent management strategies, but it's really up to local context as to which strategy we are using based on the state needs. So we've been working with dozens of states and districts to help them select, customize, and implement a range of strategies. You can see a map here with just some of the states and districts we've been working with in areas as diverse as leadership coaching, diversifying the educator workforce, mentoring and induction, social emotional learning, and many other talent management strategies that are helping students get access to effective instruction and effective educators. Across all the states we've supported, we've used a consistent model that is rooted in implementation science, comprised of 3 phases: assessing, planning, and preparing, implementing, monitoring, improving our evidence-based talent management strategies, and then scale up and sustainability. Our webinar today with our partners in Wisconsin is really, we'll really be talking about some successes in the areas of scale up and sustainability, and particularly through their strategy of creating regional partnerships to sustain grow your own programs. Our objectives for the webinar today are to explore how a collaboration between partners consisting of the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, local school districts, and educator preparation programs led to the development of new grow your own educator career pathways in Wisconsin. We have many presenters today who are going to be sharing tools, resources, and lessons learned from the 3 regional councils that were established to help strengthen these talent pipelines, particularly in Wisconsin's urban and rural areas. But first, we're going to launch a poll because we would like to get to know who is in the audience.
Whitney, are you able to deploy the poll?
There we go. We would like to know which organization you represent. So please select one that describes you most closely. Are you joining us today from a state education agency, a district, a school, an educator preparation program, or some other organization? We'll give you all a few moments to respond to that poll, and then we'll take a look at the results. Okay, let's take a look at the results. All right, so about half of us are joining from state education agencies today, less representation from districts and schools, a few people from educator preparation programs, and then a lot of other. Well, hopefully there will be a little something for everyone today, no matter what your role, because we are really talking about partnerships. So let's move to the next slide, please. On that theme of partnerships, we have quite a lineup of distinguished presenters today. I think the number of presenters is really a testament to the efforts around sustainability and scale up in Wisconsin. My name is Lindsay Hayes. I am from the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders, and I have the pleasure of kicking everybody off today. We're also going to be hearing from David DeGeyer and Beth Giles from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, bringing the state education agency perspective. We'll also hear from Dr. Dana Ryan from the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, who will be providing our educator preparation program perspective. Leah Luke from the Boston School District will be providing a school-based perspective, and Lene Tordat from the Cooperative Educational Service Agency in Wisconsin will be providing a further district perspective. Beth Ratway from the Midwest Comprehensive Center will be closing us out and sharing some very exciting resources that we have in the pipeline that can help you with your regional partnership and grow your own efforts. All right, next we're going to hear about regional partnerships for educator pathways in Wisconsin, and I'm going to turn it over to my friends from the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction.
I think David needs to be unmuted. Hey.
Thank you.
There we go.
So this is David DeGeer. I'm the Director of Teacher Education, Professional Development, and Licensing at the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction. And you can go on to the next slide. So we thought we'd start out with some context for you. So one of the concerns that all of us in Wisconsin, and that includes the state education agency, our preparation programs, and our school districts, is the sharp decline in the number of students who are entering preparation programs and the number who are completing. So you can see the blue line on top shows a pretty steep decline. I believe it's about 30% over 9 years in the number of people who are entering preparation programs, and a similar decline, although smaller numbers, in the number of people who are completing every year. So this is something that we all have skin in the game on, and in building our partnerships, this is the question we started with, is how can we work together to address this problem? Next slide, please. So as we looked about setting up regional councils, and I have to say that this is an idea that we stole from Georgia, we noticed that existing connections between districts and higher education were pretty much between school districts, high schools basically, and our tech colleges for, but otherwise there really was not much of a, existing partnerships around the state between districts and educator preparation. And we heard from both sides that they wished the other would change. So preparation programs wanted to see changes in districts, districts wanted to see changes in preparation, but there were really no forums for them to have those discussions. Next slide. So our guiding principles in starting these, and we were very open and honest with our partners, that we don't believe that there is one statewide solution for any of the problems that we're addressing, including the decline in enrollment, the staffing challenges that districts are facing. We wanted long-term sustainable solutions, and we knew that they had to be developed by the people who are going to implement them. Although we are the SEA and we have levers, if we really want real change to happen, we need to be working with our partners. So we viewed our role as initiating and facilitating ongoing discussions between districts and prep programs. And we wanted to keep it regional because we thought that more can get done at a regional level where we have fewer people in the group. And we did feel like we needed to be at these meetings so that we could hear about impediments that prep programs and/or districts had, so that we could either work to change our administrative rule or advocate for changing state statute when needed. Next slide. So we started our first council in the greater Madison area, which is where we're located. There are 4 educator preparation programs that are headquartered in the greater Madison area. So we invited all 4. And we eventually expanded that, realizing we needed to invite our partners from the technical colleges in the area, and also a couple of preparation programs that have satellite campuses here. We invited district colleagues who had already expressed interest in the staffing challenges, teacher supply issues, and I note especially directors of instruction because that's my background. We also asked our other colleagues at DPI on other teams for their recommendations. We tried to keep it balanced in terms of geography, so it's 1/7 of the state basically, and district size, because we have a medium-sized metropolitan district, Madison, as well as some very small rural districts. We tried to include key positions in school districts, and our first question to them was, we laid this all out and asked them, would ongoing meetings be useful? And the answer that we got back was a pretty resounding yes. Next slide. So we move forward with Madison. We've made some progress. We'll show you a sample in a minute. But as we're scaling up, we have developed 2 additional councils. Again, we plan to do this around the state. The first one was Milwaukee Racine Unified School District Council. So these are our 2 largest urban districts in southeastern Wisconsin. And we started a separate council for them rather than all of southeastern Wisconsin because their needs are different than a lot of the suburban districts surrounding them. And we also started a statewide rural council because we already had some work going on regarding grow your own teacher programs in rural districts, which Luke is going to talk about in a little bit. Next slide. So here's kind of an idea of the interests that each council expressed interest in. And some of them, there's interest across all 3 councils, and other issues are really specific to an individual council. Next slide. And so far, our biggest success, our biggest product to come out of this work, and this is work of all 3 councils together, is we did a statewide scan with the support of Midwest Comprehensive Center to identify all of the different grow your own programs that currently exist within Wisconsin. So this is something that we now are starting to share pretty widely so that, first of all, people know what programs are already existing, and then we can find where there are some gaps and how we might fill those gaps. Next slide. Questions?
So just a reminder that everyone that you're muted to keep the audio quality high. And so if you have questions, please feel free to type them in the chat, and we'll ask them directly to David on the call here. We'll give folks a few more minutes. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and move forward. But if you think of questions, feel free to, oh, here's one, sorry. All right, where can we find the programs that are already available? Is it on the DPI website?
We do not have it on our website yet, and perhaps Beth Ratway can answer that when she comes on. Right now, the Midwest Comprehensive Center is hosting that in a Google Doc for us. They are putting together some web pages for us, I think by the end of the month, but we will have it up on our website, I hope soon.
Great.
Yes, I will talk about, this is Beth. I will talk about that later when we talk about the website, but we're trying to capture that and the statewide scan and some of the data on a website.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. Looks like that is it for questions. So if you think of other things, feel free to type them in the chat and we'll make sure we loop back to them. Otherwise, I think we can move forward. Back over to you, Lindsay.
And I think we're ready for Dr. Dana Ryan.
Hello. Hi there. I'm Dana Ryan. I'm the Director of Advanced Professional Development at the University of Wisconsin-Parkside, and I'm glad I'm following up after David because I'm going to talk about one of the Grow Your Own programs that has been created in conjunction with UW-Parkside and Racine Unified School District, and we call it the STAR program, which stands for the Student-Based Teacher Academy of Racine. So we were actually approached by Racine Unified, who had been approached by DPI because of the state and regional needs that had been identified that encouraged such a program to be created. So we decided to focus our program on cross-categorical special education licenses because that was the highest number of emergency licenses in the state and also in the district. There were 42 teachers in the district in the year that we began who were on emergency licenses for special education. The 2016 State Superintendent's Working Group on School Staffing Issues put a quote that I think perfectly sums up this collaboration. That's that there was the need for educator preparation programs to serve as a partner in addressing these workforce shortages. We do have a special education traditional route licensure program at UW-Parkside, but there is so much of a need that developing this partnership program also allowed that to expand. The Wisconsin Teacher Equitable Access Plan from 2016 also identified several school districts across the state where students had less equitable access to highly qualified teachers, and one of those districts was Racine Unified. So with all of those state and regional needs identified, we decided to move forward with a partnership between UW-Parkside and Racine Unified that focused on cross-categorical special education licenses. Next slide, please. So in coming together to develop the STAR program, we created a mission to develop and sustain this program dedicated to closing the opportunity gap for children through the preparation and retention of diverse, high-quality teachers in RUSD. We really focused on those words diverse and high quality because we wanted to make sure that the teachers that we were involving in the program were representative of the backgrounds of the students in Racine Unified, and we also want to ensure that all students according to the Equitable Access Plan have access to these high quality teachers, including fully licensed teachers. So this partnership between UW-Parkside and Racine Unified ensures that these future educators can become leaders. And we've really found that the residents in our program, as it's completed the first year, have become leaders in their schools. So up to this point, we're definitely fulfilling our mission. Next slide, please. So the STAR program follows an urban teacher residency model. Before coming to Wisconsin, I taught at a university in New Jersey, and Montclair State University in New Jersey was one of the pioneers of this urban teacher residency model, where resident teachers who are our teachers seeking licensure are paired with experienced mentors in schools. They are grouped in a cohort, which helps them to develop a professional learning community, and they've been recruited and are being trained to serve those specific district needs, which is the need for highly qualified cross-categorical special education teachers. So we've had a little bit of attrition, and we've had some people join in, but in our cohort currently, we have 16 resident teachers who are seeking cross-categorical special ed licensure at the middle childhood through early adolescence level. So that's 1st through 8th grade. In subsequent cohorts, the licensure model has changed for special education in the state. So they will be licensed at the K through 12 level once our licensure program is reapproved for that level. So currently we have a very diverse pool of teacher candidates. We have about half white and half candidates from other racial and ethnic backgrounds. And we have about 35% of our resident teachers are males as well, which is not commonly seen in education, especially not in Racine Unified, and especially not in special education. So the makeup of our resident teachers is much more related along with the student population of Racine Unified. Next slide, please. So one of the most challenging parts in establishing this program has been clarifying the roles between the partners. And as the program has gone along, we just completed the first year, it's become very clear that this is the biggest challenge, is how to support the program from different sides of the coin when we need to work together, but everything is so intertwined that it's challenging to say who is responsible for what, because we're both responsible for our own sides, yet everything together. So Racine Unified employs the resident teachers full-time and is supporting their Tier 1 license applications, which is under that emergency license, as they work towards full licensure. They are also providing financial support. The district pays for half the tuition for the resident teachers and pays for all textbooks and fees for required tests, including the Foundations of Reading test in Wisconsin. They also have identified mentor teachers and what we call resident champions, who are teachers in the building who support the resident teachers. They meet with them at least 2 hours a week outside of the school day to answer their questions and provide additional support for them. And mentor teachers are provided for clinical placements that resident teachers complete outside of their contracted, outside of their work hours normally. And they also provide substitutes for course release days. Every Friday, the resident teachers have a substitute in their classroom, and they use those Fridays to complete their coursework and their clinical requirements. That has been a big investment by the district. That has been the costliest part, is providing those substitutes. And the district has really worked to ensure that it's as close to the same substitute each week in each classroom, so there can be some element of communication and planning that's involved. If you have the same person in the classroom every Friday, they get to know the students and their needs, and they're able to work with that resident teacher on better planning for the students. From the Parkside side of the partnership, we schedule all of the coursework and hire all of the instructors. So all of the curriculum design, curriculum planning was done by an experienced special education faculty member. We also provide academic resources and support at the university level, which includes tutoring. It can include one-on-one workshopping, special support sessions. And then we are the educator preparation program that endorses the candidates for licensure. The most challenging part about this has been what do we do when resident teachers do not perform well in the classroom? And we have had some challenges in working with Racine Unified, especially because their pathway towards licensure is tied to their employment. So if they're not being very successful on their pathway to licensure, how is that going to affect their employment? So that's been one of our biggest overall challenges. After the first year, we've had great success. The resident teachers who have stuck with the program for the full year are very invested. We've had pretty good returns with students. Parents have been very involved, and most importantly, the teachers in the school buildings are excited to support their resident teachers on their pathway to licensure. The principals are also very involved. We have principal meetings regularly to ensure that we are providing, from the Parkside side, we're providing adequate support to the resident teachers, that the district is providing adequate support to the teachers, and that the principals feel supported in having these resident teachers in their schools. Next slide, please. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have on this reading through the program. But they are teachers of record in their own classrooms. How did you recruit the resident teachers? We had a lot of different recruitment methods. Out of whom I think we invited about 30 for interviews, and we ended up with 18 resident teachers. So the interviews were more of a panel interview where we had all of the resident teachers are fully licensed. Once they complete the program, they will have met all of the requirements, if they're successful, to be endorsed for their Tier 2 license, which is their provisional license, on license with stipulations. So that's just Wisconsin licensure lingo. What prerequisites did you have for the candidates? The candidates have to have a bachelor's degree. Honestly, RUSD did most of the hiring. Our requirements for entrance into the program, we did not have a GPA requirement. That was eliminated because we found that that was a barrier for a lot of post-baccalaureate students. Entering teacher preparation programs is if they didn't do so well in their first year or two of college, that can really affect them. We've actually found that some of the people who had GPAs in college that were not so great are some of our top residents in terms of coursework and completion in the classroom, which is very exciting. Were there targeted efforts to recruit a diverse candidate pool? If so, what were they? Yes, there were conversations that were held, like I said before, with local groups in Milwaukee and Racine through groups specifically targeted to recruit students. And we also, it was very appealing to a lot of the people who were already working in the district, as I mentioned before, who might not have had a pathway to licensure otherwise because they need to work full time. We only have 1 or 2 residents. They hadn't worked with children before, and it was very much like someone who's a career changer and is hired by the district on a Tier 1 license. The application process did allow the principals to ask the candidates what kinds of experiences they'd had. Some had worked as long-term subs or educational assistants for 20 years. Some, we had one person who came from law enforcement. We had several who came from social work backgrounds. So they didn't have any classroom experience, but again, similar to a career changer. They were given those extra supports as a Tier 1 licensed teacher in their school. During the program, they are required to complete clinical experiences in grade levels other than the grade level that they themselves teach. So they are out in different types of classrooms, both in their school and in other schools, so they do get a full range of clinical experiences. And I think that's just about my time. So thank you. My contact information is on the last slide, and please feel free to email me with any additional questions.
All right, we're ready for Leah Luke from the Mauston School District.
Hi, my name is Leah Luke, and I'm going to give you a nuts and bolts perspective of how we have typed into the pipeline at the high school level. Just a little bit of background information. I've been teaching, I'm a classroom teacher, Spanish in Mauston, Wisconsin, and our high school population is about 450 students, excluding our charter school, which adds about another 50. So we're a small rural district in Wisconsin. In 2010, I was the Wisconsin State Teacher of the Year, and after that time, I completed a fellowship at the U.S. Department of Education, and I also serve on the Wisconsin Rural Schools Alliance Board. And I only mention that laundry list of things because it has given me special access points to potential partners in addressing the teacher shortage in rural Wisconsin in particular. Next slide, please. So if you happen to look at these slides later or access these slides later, there is a video that summarizes everything that I'm going to share with you right now, because I tend to talk a lot and I will probably run out of time before I talk about all the components of this local program. So the link does work if you're viewing the slides later, but didn't quite work today. So some of the features of the program that we built here at Mauston High School is a club for students, credentials, coursework, clinicals, and collaboration. So at Mauston High School, this is the 3rd year that we are running an Educators Rising Club. Educators Rising is a national organization, and full disclosure, I was on the national standards writing team for Educators Rising, so I feel a special place in my heart for this particular organization. It's a national organization that's hosted by Phi Delta Kappa International. If you're considering, and I think anyone who is watching the slideshow, if you're associated with a district, should encourage your district, someone in the district, to begin a club for students who are considering a career in education. So a couple of years ago on the national ACT, only 5% of students indicated an interest in going into teaching. At Mauston High School, I mentioned that we have 450 students, and our club runs about 25 students, or includes about 25 students each of the 3 years that we've been up and running. That seems like a large number of kids to join a club, but that's right at that 5% or a little bit less. So if in my district, I thought maybe we would have 1 or 2 kids at each grade level that would be interested in a club that helped them explore the profession, but in fact, the membership ballooned larger than I thought. One of the things that we help our students do is build credentials. So we kind of had a loose and informal tutoring built into the schedules of students that kind of had gaps or holes in their schedule where they were going in and assisting elementary, middle, or even other high school classrooms. We've formalized that into a two-tiered system of tutoring, and students earn credit for that. We have just the introductory tutoring classroom assistant, we call it Classroom Assistant 1, and then we have the Classroom Assistant Practicum, in which students complete micro-credentials that can be found on the Educators Rising website. Coursework, this costs districts nothing, so I really want to emphasize that to start a club, there are no national dues, there are currently no state dues for that. If a student does qualify and then goes on to compete at the national level in some of the competition categories that they have, there's over 20, then I believe that there's a $10 fee, and that's something new. But really, for districts to just kind of look around, this is what I did here in Mauston. I looked around and thought about what courses do we already offer at Mauston that would help build a foundation for students who are considering a career. So things such as psychology or AP psychology, statistics or AP stats, and what other types of courses, Spanish, I teach Spanish. What other types of courses could we promote for students who are considering a career in education to help them explore already at the high school level? We offer distance education courses, as many rural districts do, to fill needs, and we have students who are taking sign language and then later have gone on to consider careers in speech and language. So giving them, we just kind of took what we already were offering and we massaged that into a career pathway, an informal career pathway. We are now in our 4th semester of offering a CAP course through UW-Oshkosh, and I'm an adjunct professor for UW-Oshkosh. It's the an educational Foundations of Education course, EDU 201, Individual, School, and Society, where high school students, they come in an hour. There is no place to squeeze it into my already tight schedule. So in the fall semester, students come in an hour before the regular academic day starts, and they earn 3 college credits, exploring again what the education career is all about. I also take those same students to to some of their first professional conferences. Last year, none of the students that I took, and there's only 6 students who were enrolled last year. Again, it's a small pool of kids that want to come in an hour before the academic day starts in the fall semester, but took them to their first professional conference that was being held locally or near enough right in Wisconsin Dells, and so they had that experience. Clinicals I've mentioned with the teaching assistants and teaching assistant practicum for a grade where students earn micro-credentials, and then collaboration. And maybe collaboration should be labeled better as connections because of those different groups that I'm associated with that I mentioned earlier on. My students, both in the club and in the class that they take, the dual credit course that they take, are exposed to not just classroom teachers within our district, not just those expert classroom teachers within our district, but also specialists such as school psychologists, school counselors, our administrators come in, our director of teaching and learning always comes in and addresses both the club members as well as the students who are enrolled in the dual credit course. So it's making those connections and learning to collaborate. We also, I'll talk a little bit later about our regional partners. And our students get to know students who are also considering careers in education in other districts that are nearby as well. And then also the connection to outside experts, because I'm a member of the Wisconsin State Teachers of the Year, or State Teachers of the Year, that I can connect my kids who are considering maybe going into art education with an art educator, an exceptional art educator in a different area of the state. Next slide, please. Our regional partners, informally and formally, Adams Friendship, which they are also the county seat of the neighboring county, and this was really our first partner that we reached out to. And they have a high school club as well, Baraboo, Nakusa, and Wisconsin Rapids. So if we're going to go visit a college campus, which we do, we take students to a a college campus at least in the fall and in the spring at least twice a year. And we reach out to those partners to see if their students would also like to join us, and we frequently do. Next slide, please. And our state partners, Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction was one of our first partners. We laid out a plan, a logic model back in 2016, February of 2016, of how to build the high school to teacher prep program pipeline. And Wisconsin DPI was one of our first partners, with David accompanying the group as we laid out that logic model in Baltimore. University of Wisconsin-Oshkosh was also one of the first partners, Chippewa Valley Technical College, because I think the technical colleges offer a unique entry point for students considering a degree in education by completing a 2-year degree first and then moving on to a cooperating 4-year college. Wisconsin Education Association Council has been very supportive in our efforts to put on a conference each of the last 2 years. Wisconsin Teachers of the Year Network, which I mentioned earlier, and WRSA, the Wisconsin Rural Schools Alliance. Next slide, please. I've included a quote from the director of the Wisconsin Rural Schools Alliance, and why they support this initiative. And they've just been really great partners in providing judges, providing support, financial support for the conference as well each year. And then, after I give you a second to read that, I will take questions in the less than 10 seconds that I have left.
So we have one question already. Is this club offered to a certain grade level?
At present, we offer to freshmen on up to seniors. And to be perfectly honest, like, the number of students who are in the club fluctuates from month to month. Some students come for a couple of meetings and then they just they listen to a few guest speakers, they participate in some of our targeted service projects, and they just decide it's not for them. And I think that that is just as big of a success as when the club helps cement in a student's mind that they want to go into education. We are all about being eyes wide open and showing them the full gamut. So if a student joins as a freshman, they will have toured 8 different higher eds if they've gone on each of the trips, freshman through senior year, and learned about 8 different teacher prep programs from across the state, as well as toured other schools that look different than ours.
Great, thanks. All right, that's all the questions I see. So I think we're ready to transition to our next presenter.
Hi, I'm Lene Trudeau from SASA 2 in Wisconsin, and we're located out of Whitewater, but we cover 74 districts in mostly the southeastern part of the state. We have some big districts, Madison, Beloit, Janesville, and a lot of small rural districts, and then some in-between districts in there, some in between the large and the small, but I would say the majority are mostly small rural districts. SASA is, most states have a form of SASA, but in the state of Wisconsin, we are not part of the Department of Public Instruction, but we work with the Department of Public Instruction. We're pretty much all self-funded except for some grants that we get through the state and other places. But our goal is to serve districts in whatever way possible and try to consolidate those services so that districts kind of aren't out there on their own. If you want, you can go on to the next slide. And I'll just talk to you about some of the programs that we have in place. Some of these programs are to help districts get more teachers. Others are to help them retain and keep the teachers that they have, and especially new teachers, because we know they turn over at a pretty high rate. So part of what we do to help with that is we have the New Teacher Center. We just started this last year, and it is actually a 2-year training for mentors. Within that training, we have it's out of Santa Cruz, so it's a nationwide training, but they've got about 20 years of research behind them, showing between 2 and 5 or more months growth in the students of new teachers, and that is per year of their mentoring, and typically it's 2 to 3 years of that full-fledged mentoring. Our state now requires 3 years, so this will help a lot for teachers or mentors to have this training. So the training mainly, we support new teachers too with some seminars, but the training is mainly for mentors of new teachers. It also shows that teachers who have received training through this new teacher center mentors have a 31% higher retention rate. So it's pretty significant for teachers to have this support. And the training is very intensive. It's you know, all the way down. It's a lot of classroom practice and very heavily instructionally based. So it kind of takes mentors from that role of, you know, here's where you go and here's what you do, to let's look at your instruction and let's analyze student learning and that sort of thing. So that's a really big program that we've just recently started. Another one that we've picked up in the last couple of years, because there's just been this high need for new teachers, and we're experiencing a teacher shortage like we haven't seen in quite a few years. So we have a hiring fair, and with that hiring fair, we connect districts, colleges, universities, and new teachers. And so we're offering more and more for new teachers as we do that. So we're offering them help with resume writing, interviewing, and that sort of thing. But they also get a chance just to informally meet with districts and see what openings they have. And our districts get a chance to informally meet with newly trained teachers to see what kind of a fit they have in their district. I also, half of my job is the new teacher center. The other half of my job is working with superintendents. We have 74 districts in our SASA. Most of the other SASAs have between 10 and 25 to 30 because they're in more rural areas than what we are. But we have another person and I who actually go out and meet with the superintendents. We meet with them at their meetings, and we meet with them individually, and we also pull them into SASA once a month to have meetings with them. And part of the purpose of that is to see what their needs are, to help with them through some of the licensing changes that we have going on right now, and then also to make sure that if they all have a similar need, that we're helping to address that need. So, for example, if they're having teachers in areas that are that they're having a difficult time getting, we work to see how can we recruit and retain and get teachers into those districts. Part of that superintendent work is to just to help them also collaborate with each other, so that they can, if there's a need in a certain area, we can help to maybe fill in a gap in that area. And this is kind of where we're going in the future. More of is the certification and training. We're working on an online program, and that online program can help address gaps in areas. This isn't something we have up and rolling at this time, but it is something that we're working on the back end and trying to get it in place, so that we can help maybe even with a need in a certain licensed area, have work with the universities and colleges in our area and help to get those things in place so that we can fill gaps. So, for example, if we have a technical education teacher who needs training in the education portion to be able to go into a district, that we would be able to build that and have it available for teachers to be able to have that support going into the school year, in addition to the mentoring support that they might need. That's, we're continuing to build on that area, and that's pretty much the area that we're focusing on for our future. But again, it's just in the starting phases of that, and we're hoping to have that build into a much more than what it is right now. We also help some with some of the 2+2 programs. There's one right now between, we have Blackhawk Technical College and University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, which is right in our backyard here. So there are programs like that that we assist superintendents and teachers to find, help them find and help them to get what their teachers need in place. That's pretty much what I have, and if you have any questions, please feel free to put them up.
Great, thanks. We do already have one question. Is the requirement for 3 years of mentoring statewide for all incoming teachers?
Right now, there is a requirement of 3 years. It doesn't have to look exactly the same all 3 years, but there is a requirement that teachers have those 3 years of support.
Okay, next question. What role do the colleges have at your hiring fair?
Colleges are there mostly to meet with the new teachers. So as teachers come, they can actually be there for teachers or for schools to connect with, but the colleges come in as partly support for the new teachers, or we recruit through the colleges. So the colleges can come and they can have a booth set up, but we also use them, like UW-Whitewater, to have connection with their new teachers so that we can connect them with the districts that are at the fair. Hopefully that makes sense.
Great. And last question, can you explain the 2+2 program?
Sure. The 2+2 program that I was referring to was at Blackhawk Tech, which is between Beloit and Janesville. If you're familiar with Wisconsin, Blackhawk Tech is teaching a 2-year childcare program. So at the end of 2 years, they would be certified in that. And then UW-Whitewater offers the additional 2 years. So if a student decides to take those 2 years at Blackhawk Tech, they have different maybe requirements for like some of the basic studies, so that it prepares them for that other 2 years of the bachelor's degree. And then at Whitewater, they offer almost completely online the other 2 years. They do make several visits to Whitewater, but the other 2 years then will finish up that 4-year bachelor's degree to get them a teaching certification. So it's the 2 years at technical school and 2 years at university.
Great, thank you. That concludes our questions. I think we are going to switch over to Beth and Lindsay.
I'll go first. So there's some other resources that are being developed and or are developed to help support your work moving forward besides this webinar, but that a lot of the ones that I'll talk about are built off of these discussions and the groups that we've brought together in the regional councils. They were either built in response to a need that they had and or in a response to something that they were looking for or that they were building themselves. So the first piece, and you can click on the next slide. The one resource that I'm going to highlight, and it's in progress, so it's not posted yet, so it's not live. David had mentioned it earlier, but what we decided with DPI as a Midwest Comprehensive Center, and the Midwest Comprehensive Center is their support center that can help DPI with needs moving their work forward. And one of the things, as David talked about, is we've been partnering with them for a couple years now and really thinking through this grow your own work. And as a result, as the end of this year's work, we are trying to capture what we've done in one spot. So we're building a Google site that will be live hopefully by September, that kind of captures a lot of the discussions and things that we've been talking about today. So it just begins on the top, it gives us the goal, what we've been working on. Then it has the teacher competencies that are that guide Wisconsin's work from INTASC. It's from the INTASC standards. They're built off of that. So we want to ground the work in these teacher competencies that are the expectations from DPI and as a state for teachers. You can go down. And then what we're doing now is what David had talked about in his slide. One of the, I think, best things that we've been doing with these councils is trying to access what's happening. What we found is when we have conversations at each council, people are sharing great work that nobody knew about, except for maybe people around them or their partners or the things that they were actually just sharing. And so we were really excited about trying to capture that. And what we did was literally just build a Google Doc. And at every meeting, we had the participants at the meeting revisit the Google Doc and add programs of the good work that's happening. And they described the program, and they went through an overview, and they talked about resources and what they were doing. And so it's an ongoing Google Doc that David is going to be pushing out internally. We are going to be going through the SASAs as well, in terms of the regional service agencies in the state, in terms of trying to capture even more programs that are happening across the state. So it's a document in progress. But what we've done currently is try to tease out some of the good practices and best practices that are happening across the state in each of these areas, which you actually just heard about, some of our most exciting work. And so what we've done is under the high school post-secondary options and career possibilities, we have resources, we're building out resources and promising practices that are already happening in our state, highlighting things and people that they can access. And good programs and people that they can talk to or go visit and see how they're working in order to build, grow your own programs that fit your needs. And then towards the bottom of the website here, we talk about kind of the specific areas of work that came across as we were building these councils. How can councils support this work? So we talk about building partnerships. We talked, and we're continuing to talk about high school pathways is a big piece, building up the Educator Risings piece. Building up, we're also working with our tech colleges because they have a common set of syllabi for intro to ed courses. So we're looking at that and how do you build high school pathways off of that. And one of the biggest needs across all three councils were pathways for paras. What does that look like? What does it feel like? What resources do we have? One thing that we did a scan from across the 50 states about what people are doing around para pathways, and we gave a summary of different ideas of what other states and other districts are doing to address building pathways for paras, one being residency programs. So those are the types of resources that we built to support this work that we will highlight on this as well. And then on the bottom, it just highlights the work of the three councils. And then what it will do is we built some guidance and we collected some guidance around how to build the council. What does it mean? How do you do it? How can it support your work? What have we learned from engaging in these three very different councils? Their purpose, the work, the conversations, and the work that they're sharing. So we just tried to put it all in one spot. You know, we wanted to capture the good work of the councils and the discussions. And so that's what this website's going to do. It's not done. We can't release it yet. We're still it's still being built, but we're using the conversations and the work that you just learned about, as well as the statewide scan that's being filled out to highlight the programs that are happening across the state. Lindsay?
Thank you, Beth. I'm going to briefly highlight one more resource because we've heard from our colleagues in Wisconsin who are working with Scale Up to the regional councils. We wanted to highlight a Center on Great Teacher and Leaders resource that's going to be released here in the next few days that might be of interest to those rural districts and schools. It is a brief titled 10 Mentoring and Induction Challenges in Rural Schools and How to Address Them. It is intended for school and district level practitioners. And what it does is identify some of those challenges faced by rural schools and districts around mentoring and induction, proposes some solutions, and then highlights program examples. So please be looking for that on the GTL website in the next few days. Next slide, please. Any last questions I can address in the chat pod, but let's move on. I believe that brings us to the conclusion of our webinar. We've heard from a lot of different partners. I want to thank all of the partners in Wisconsin for taking time out of their busy schedules to speak with us. We do have 2 more webinars left in our series, one next week on tools to strengthen educator pipelines, and another on data-driven conversations to improve mentoring and induction in high-needs schools. So please make note of those. We hope that you join us for both. What I'd like to do now is have everyone, we are exactly 2 minutes from the end of the hour, which is perfect because we have a little survey we would like you to take that will take less than 2 minutes to complete. We very much need and want your feedback, so please take some time, click on that survey link and help us get some feedback to improve our last 2 webinars. I think what we're going to do is leave this link up for maybe another minute and a half, and then we'll advance to the last slide that has everyone's contact information. So I want to again thank everyone for joining us. Special thanks to our Wisconsin colleagues, and I hope everyone came away from this webinar today with some really great resources that they can take away related to regional partnerships and grow your own programs. Thank you, everyone.